Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to the WordPress Sydney September meetup for 2021. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about WordPress development on the local machine, so on your local machine, and not to be confused with the word local, because local is the same name as the app as well that we're going to use. So kind of dual purpose there. So on your local machine, and the app that we're going to look at is called local, but I'll dive into that in a minute. You can say hi. Press any buttons on social media. I think we're live streaming in the Facebook WordPress Sydney Meetup group as well. So you can click on the thumbs up or like or whatever you are. Some agenda items as well. Let me just see if I can get up the chat. There we go. Where's chat? Okay. So we usually start around about 6 o'clock. We tend to finish around about 7 o'clock, maybe 7:30, depending on how many questions there are. We usually follow the same format. So we do a welcome, let people introduce themselves, do a little bit of news, main presentation, and then the Q&A. The only real thing to note is when you're in here, just make sure you abide by the code of conduct. And I've copied, I've copied the wrong link. That was the link for here. Let's just copy that link again. There we go. That's the right one. The code of conduct for that one. For all our meetups online, just it basically means just be nice to everyone. And I'm sure you guys all are. If you want to ask a question, just post it in the chat and we'll circle around. We'll try and get it there and then, or we'll circle around later on to do some of the questions for you. If you're doing social share, the social media hashtag is hashtag WPSyd. I just want to give a little bit of thanks to our sponsors. Now, we don't have our sponsors here. Unfortunately, we don't have them online at the moment. But when we do go back to face-to-face meetings, they do really help out with things like costs for locations or putting up locations and money for pizzas and other good stuff there. So these are all of our sponsors. We've got Kinetics, we've got WP Engine, we've got Plesk, the WordPress community support as well, who pay all the meetup fees, and Microsoft Reactor Sydney, which is our venue. Hopefully we can get back to them either at the end of this year or next year. So have a visit of some of those people, see what they do and what they offer as well. And just give a big thanks to those for sponsoring our meetup. As well. So Dow is helping me out tonight, which is great, but I really am looking to build up maybe a team of 3 or 4 people, just so it's not always me all the time. So if you are interested in becoming an organizer, if you want to know what's in it, what duties it requires, it doesn't require very much, maybe 2 or 3 hours a month. I got a little form there. You can fill that in, if you're interested, and I'll get in touch with you. Okay, so some news. John says virtual pizza. We could do virtual pizza. I could sit here and eat some. You can just watch. It's a little bit of news for September 2021. I've got some news items here. Maybe I've got some links. No, I don't have some links. I'll post any of the links to these and the presentation itself. There's only a few slides. I'll post that on the meetup page afterwards, so you can get all these links. But the first one is a company called Stellar WP. It's acquired the #1 WordPress LMS LearnDash just last week. I think it was last week for that. So it sounds like from the article link there that they're going to leave it as it is. So they're going to let LearnDash run as their own brand with their own team. And they're not looking to make any changes at the moment. But there's been a lot of acquisitions in the WordPress space this year. And that's probably one of the biggest ones. So LearnDash, the LMS, Learning Management System, been snapped up by Stellar WP. And they also have the following brands. They've got iThemes. They've got the Events Calendar, Restrict Content Pro, Cadence. So Cadence Theme and Cadence Blocks. That's Stellar WP as well. One of the biggest donation plugins, which is Give WP. Then you've got Iconic WP and now LearnDash. So they've been buying quite a bit over the last couple of years and now own LearnDash. For the developers in you, have a look at, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce this. I think it's FOST JS, but it's a new headless framework from a WP Engine. So if you just Google FOST.js, if you're interested in doing development, especially headless development, it's a brand new framework that WP Engine have just brought out. And it'd be a good start to follow documentation to get you up to speed on headless WordPress development. The third item for tonight is there's a great article. I'm sure I posted the links here, but I don't have. Sorry about that. I will post them at the end. A great article from Print My Blog. Printmy.blog. And they're basically talking about democratizing other publishing. And this is a great article which talks about how you can turn your WordPress blogs into non-online formats such as EPUBs, PDFs, Open Document, and XML formats. So they're all about democratizing online blogging, but they also want to do the same for offline publishing as well. So a great little article there about how you can turn all your blog posts into all these different formats and then share them online as well or offline as well. So that's a great read for the month. And from PHP point of view, so the language that WordPress runs on, PHP 8.1 has a release candidate 1. And this is another one for developers, I guess. Version 8.1 is due to be released around about the end of November. I think it's November the 25th. Now, this version 8.1, it fixes a lot of bugs and a lot of stability issues that can't come with any kind of major release, major core release. But it also has some new features as well. So things like enumeration, new class initializations, and my favorite, which is read-only property modifiers for class properties. But there's a whole heap of extra stuff in there as well. So again, if you're a developer, go and have a look at PHP 8.1, release candidate 1. And the 8.1 is due at the end of November for that. So not too much happening in the WordPress globe at the moment, but quiet with COVID and everything else. But there's 4 little stories that jumped out at me this month. And again, I'll copy the links in the meetup page and on the Facebook group afterwards, so you can have a look at those if you haven't screen shared that already. Ask questions, of course. Yep, and the links, as I said, I'm going to post them in the comments below this video and on all the meetup pages as well. So you'll get to see those later on. Okay, let's jump into it. So WordPress development on local is the topic for tonight. So first question, why develop on your local machine? Well, it's pretty much going to be a lot faster if you develop on your local machine. And you can develop offline as well without the need for internet. And yes, prior to COVID and stuff, we've had people developing on planes. So when we have the WordCamps, the big WordCamp weekends, we usually fly around the country, and it's quite nice just to be able to sit on the plane and do your work on there in your local machine and not have to bother about connecting to the internet or FTP and stuff up or anything like that. So develop on local is much faster than having to push stuff up to even a staging site for those. So that's the biggest reason. Develop on your local and develop without the need for the internet. It's a lot faster. Okay, so there's quite a few choices if you want to create a WordPress website on your local machine. You can install and run services separately. Now, I have been doing this for a long time. So I have a Windows 10 machine. I run PHP, I run MySQL, actually MariaDB, and Nginx as services that I can spin up and spin down when I need to. And that just allows me to run that kind of local stack for that. You can also invest in some apps. So some apps to put all these services together. So some of the popular development apps are, I do have some links here. So there's one called ServerPress. Now that's from, so it's called Desktop Server from ServerPress. And that offers a very basic free version and a pro version as well with additional features. And it supports Windows and Mac as well. And Desktop Server, it's been around for a long time now, but it does its job for that. So it's a very easy way to, a lot of people use Desktop Server for that particular thing. Another package that you can use is something called MAMP. It also offers like a free and pro version as well and supports Windows and Mac OS as well. So very similar to Desktop Server. You've got that kind of free, very basic, you can run a WordPress website, but if you want kind of more bells and whistles, then you have to pay for that. But the one we're going to be talking about tonight is local. So it's local version 6.0 and it's free. And includes all the pro features that used to require a paid subscription. So that's what got me back onto local. I used to use local quite a few years back, but then they introduced this local pro, which you had to upgrade to get to all these like cool features. But now, as of this year, they've merged that into local version 6.0, and you get all the premium stuff for free. So it's just the one version of local now, and that's by the hosting company called Flywheel as well. And Flywheel have recently been bought by WP Engine, but again, they are running as like a separate brand. So it's certainly supported by like kind of the big major WordPress managed hosting companies. It's not going to go away. Some of the developers are here in Sydney as well, and it's been a very, very, very good tool for them over the past few years. They've, from a marketing point of view, it's been great for them because a lot of people use it. But even from a branding point of view as well, we had some of the guys down in WordCamp Sydney in 2019, and we were walking over the bridge at Piermont, and they had their local green t-shirts on, and a couple of people went, "Hey, Flywheel!" So it's certainly a brand that's getting acknowledged from developers as well. And so there's kind of three different options for you. The desktop server and the MAMP, they're kind of older versions, but they still work. They're still good enough. But local WP, it's kind of got all those bells and whistles, and it's free. So that's what I'm going to do a little bit of a demo with tonight. So let's see. All right, benefits of using a local app. Well, you can set up a local WordPress installation in a few clicks. You can choose the server type as well. So that can be Nginx or Apache. You can choose PHP. You can access WordPress databases. You can run SSL on local as well, which is a bit more difficult to do if you're using those previous versions like desktop server and MAMP. You can clone websites in seconds. You can create a live link as well, which I'll demonstrate to you. And you can create blueprints, and blueprints are basically templates of WordPress websites. So if you have a WordPress website, you load plugins, configure your theme, do customizer. At a certain point, you can then save that as a blueprint. And then next time when you spin up a new site, you can create that from the blueprint. You don't have to install all this stuff again. So that's really, really good. Now, installing the local app is super easy. I'm not going to go, I'll do a demo for this one, but installing it's super easy. There's lots of documentation as well, and the full instructions are here. So it's localwp.com. You can download it from there. Follow the installation. It's super easy. Just a few clicks and it installs it there for you. Let me see. Let's see. I'm going to actually just jump into the demo here at the moment, and I'll show you all that stuff there. Let me go. There we are. I'll just make sure. Yes, you can see that. Okay. So here we've got Flywheel. So I've installed it on my WordPress machine. Now, before you go spinning up any WordPress websites, it's a good idea to go into your preferences and the new site defaults as well. And this here, you can change where all your sites are stored. So I think by default, it stores it in your, certainly for Windows, it stores it in your user profile. So that might not be where you want to store all your sites. I prefer to use all my projects on Dropbox because then I can share them between all the different machines that I use. So before I created any websites, I came here and set my site path to my Dropbox projects folder. So that's probably the first thing you want to do. Otherwise, it's going to create a whole new set of stuff on your C drive. Admin as well. You might want to set up an admin email. That will be used by all the new WordPress websites unless you change it in the setup screen. You can use specific environments or just click on preferred one, and I'll show you that in a second. And another one is, so all the websites that you create are going to have a .local end domain to it. Just because, .local, it's recognized by Windows and Mac as not a real domain. So your operating system is not going to try and qualify that out on the internet. It's just going to leave it alone. For that. Okay, so let's spin up a new website. I'll let you have a look at this. Okay, so this is it installed. Actually, before we go, just have a quick look. There's one down here is called Add-ons. You might want to play around with some of these. So these are add-ons that come into the local machine. So things like image optimizer. So you can run an image optimization service across all of your sites on your WordPress site. And you can configure that. So you can maybe squash all your JPEGs down, squash all your PNGs down. There's a link checker as well. So if you're running a fairly big website, you can click on that and make sure there's no 404s before you release that to production. There's other ones like tables, there's cloud backups, notes as well. If you've got lots and lots of client sites, it might sometimes useful to have notes. Then you've got Xdebug for Visual VS Code and for PHP Storm. You've got this one called Instant Reload, which is quite nice. I've got some of these installed. I've got Image Optimizer, I've got Link Check, and I've got Instant Reload. So what Instant Reload does is when you spin up a website, it opens up in a web browser and it has a look at all the code, and any code that you change, it then refreshes the screen. So it just helps you, saves you having to press refresh all the time. So those are the add-ons there. There's not a few, there's not quite a lot in there. And I've just got a couple installed in here: Link Checker, Image Optimization, and Instant Reload. But there will be more in the future. So you can come here and configure that. There's another one here. So if you have a Flywheel or WP Engine account, you can actually connect your local app to whatever hosting account you have. And that allows you to push up and push and pull down and kind of synchronize the site between your local machine and your hosting site as well. So some people find that useful, but you don't have to have a Flywheel or a WP Engine site to use Flywheel. So I choose this local app. You don't have to bother about logging in there at all. Okay, so local sites. Let's create one. So it's down the bottom here. Click on Add Site, and you give the site a bit of a name. So I'll call it WPSyd. And then you've got some advanced options down the bottom here. You can see we're on step 3. So step 1, set up site. Step 2, environment. And then step 3 is setting up WordPress. So some advanced options here. So already it's given the local site a domain name, and it's just used the name, and it's got a .local subdomain. It's got the site path, so that's the default that you created. Obviously, you can override these whenever you want, but it's nice just to have it as a setup. And I'm not going to use a blueprint from this because I've not got any saved at the moment. So you don't have to have advanced options, but it's there if you want to configure them. So you click on continue. So this is setting up the environment. This is where it gets really, really useful because if you had to set up all this stuff yourself, you'd be take a long time, and it requires quite a lot of technical knowledge here. So local comes with a preferred environment. The preferred one matches kind of what Flywheel and WP Engine have on their kind of hosting accounts. So it runs one of the latest PHP versions, so 7.3.5. It's running Nginx, and it's running MySQL version 8 as well for that. So that's the preferred option, and that will change as you get updates to the local app. These will change, the PHP version will increment, but at the moment, that's what the preferred is set at. But you can override that by clicking on custom. And this is where it gets really flexible because it's kind of more difficult to do this in the other 2 bits of software that I was showing you. But if you are developing a client website, and you know that client website has a particular environment, maybe they're running Nginx or maybe they're still running Apache, you can match your system here on your local to that. And by mapping the same type of environment, then you're reducing the amount of risk that when you load into the production environment, that's you're not going to have as much risk of something going wrong if you're trying to match the exact versions. So PHP here, we've got 5.6 that you can download. So if you've got like old customers or running old hosting site, you can still make sure it runs on that. Then we've got 7.4.1 and we've got 8 as well in there. So if you want to test all your sites on version 8, you can certainly do that. The web server, so we've got Nginx, latest version, or at least 1 point down, and Apache. So you can choose which web server you run, and the database as well. So MariaDB, you can run that, or you can run MySQL. And again, we've got an old version you can download for that. So if your clients are still using like old stuff, you can match that and run your WordPress website to make sure that your stuff still works. Because if they are running older versions, what you don't want to be doing is installing plugins that require things like PHP 7 or, well, hardly any require PHP 8 just now, but you want to make sure that your website is going to work when you load it into the production environment. So I'm just going to keep preferred and continue on for that. And the last one here is just going to ask for a WordPress admin. So I'm going to type Bob, banana, if I can write that. There we go. And it's set my WordPress email account from the default from there. Now I can do multi-site as well. So if you want to create a multi-site, and then you can choose the subdirectory or the subdomain mode as well. But I'm going to keep this just a single website here, and then just going to spin this up here. Okay, it doesn't take very long. So what it's doing just now is it's probably, you won't be able to see this, but it's flagged up a Windows command prompt. It's just because it needs to make an admin change. So I'm just going to say yes to that. And you might find it might kind of pop up a few, this needs to change some system environments variables when you're installing things, and that's okay. So at the moment, it's just creating the database. It's downloading PHP. It's configuring the Nginx as well. It's running my SQL. It's creating the database from there. Downloading the WordPress files. And just getting ready for a new site. It doesn't take very long at all, which is quite cool. Okay, and there we go. So here we got the local sites on the right-hand side here. If we right-hand click on that, then you can have a link to the website. You can have a link to the admin dashboard as well. You can show which folder it's in locally. You can open an SSH shell or Windows command shell, and you can stop and start the sites as well. You can clone it, export it as well if you want to upload that. Save it as a template, change the domain name, or delete it as well. So it's not very intuitive for those commands are there, but they are there if you right-hand click over there. Otherwise, once you've selected it, we can see that I've got the file path up here, but I've got 3 tools: overview, database, and tools here. And overview just tells you exactly the stuff that you just went through to configure. So site domain, which web server, PHP version, database. You can click once for going into the admin as well, just if you're pretty lazy. And what WordPress version, it always downloads the latest. I'm just telling you it's no for multi-site as well. Database here, it uses something called adminer. So it's not PHP my admin, it's adminer, which is more basic, and I'll show you that in a second. And just some details of where it's running, and it all defaults like root and root password. And some of the tools as well. You've got Mailhog, live links, and these are the add-ons that I created: the links checker, the instant reload, and the optimizer as well. And I'll show you a few of these in a minute, but let's have a quick look at this. Before you get started, one of the great things about using local is that you can run SSL. Now, if you're running Windows particularly, creating an SSL, a local SSL certificate under Windows is a challenging business. So being able to do that with a one click is fantastic, and that will save you heaps and heaps of time. So basically come here, you're gonna have to do this every time you spin up local, is you click on trust. And what you haven't seen here is I've got a little Windows command set that says, it needs to change my Windows stuff. It's basically playing around with certificates. I click on OK, and that's it, trusted. So what that means is I can now load in WPSyd.local with an HTTPS, and that should be all right for that. So I'll copy that across. Let's see, I've got so HTTPS WPSyd.local. And there we go. So that's the version 5.8.1 with the default theme, whatever it is, and WP admin. Oops. Let's try that again. There we go. And it was Bob, and I think I've got the word banana. But if you configure that one click login, and then you can do this straight from local, and it just goes straight into the WordPress admin. So there we go. There's WordPress up and running. It's as easy and simple as that. Now, some of the other cool things about the local for this. So database. So you've got adminer here. It always opens up in my default browser, so I'll just copy it in here. So if you need to get out of the database and make changes, here it is. Now, it's a little bit of a cut down version of PHP my admin. It looks very simple, but it does the job. So if you need to go and have a look at users, you can go and have a look at the users, have a look at the data. There's the one admin password there. Or if you need to go into like post meta or the options and have a look at some of the options that's in there, you can get at that, and you can do export and all that stuff as well, export and import for that. So you've got like a full database manager there. It's not as fancy as PHP my admin, but it does the job. Then you've got, let's see, another thing called Mailhog. Now, Mailhog comes with local by default. It's not an add-on. I'm going to open Mailhog. And if you guys haven't heard of Mailhog before, what it basically does is it runs on your local machine. I'll just copy it here. And it's like a sandbox capture for emails. So here we've had WordPress. So we've created a new WordPress user. WordPress sends an email out to new users. So it's done that here, and it's captured that one here in Mailhog. So for example, there, you can see it. And what this is really good is because if you had your local environment set to actually send out emails, which mine actually is, then that would start to send out to the big bad world. So Mailhog kind of puts a stop at that. It's like an email sandbox for that. And we can test that out. So I'm going to install a plugin called WP Test Mail, I think it might be called. A little bit slow tonight. There we go. WP send mail, or it could be test. There we go. WP test email. I'll install that. It only takes a few seconds. Then activate it. And this is quite a good little plugin to use, actually, if you have email problems on your WordPress website. And in Tools, Test Email, it just allows you to send a very simple test email to someone. So I can say, let's go to sarah@sarah.com. As a subject, test email, and send it. That one. It sends out from WordPress. And if I go into Mailhog, have a look, there's now 2. So it's captured that in that kind of email sandbox environment. So that really does allow you to test emails as well and capture it without sending out to the big bad world. So that's it there, just a very, very test one there. So that's basically local by Flywheel. So it's got all these kind of things. It's got this Mailhog in here. You can access the database. You've got the overview as well. And you can change all these different types of versions as well to have a look for those. But there's one more exciting thing that I think is really, really good about this local, and it's right down at the bottom here. You might not be able to see it. Let me see if I can zoom in. Hopefully this will work. No, it's not going to work tonight. Okay, that's fine. So right down at the bottom, it's called Live Link. Okay, and I can enable that. It only takes a few seconds. So it says Live Link is enabled, and I can copy for that. And if I go back up into here, you can see that it runs off a site called localsite.io. And I'm going to paste that down here. So I've copied that into the chat. And if anyone you guys want to test that, you can click on that. And that's actually going to go directly to the site that I'm running here on my website. So it uses a virtual, a VPN tunnel. So a private tunnel through this website called localsite.io. And that links directly to local that I'm running and the actual website as well for that. So as long as you've got this live link, let me just tell you what those are. So the username is receipt. And password is joyful. There we go. So when that admin thing comes up, you can type username as receipt and password is joyful. There we go. And then that'll link directly to my machine. And it's really good. So if you've been developing something and you want to get some feedback from your client, and you don't want to go through all the hassle of pushing it up to a staging website, you can just generate this live link. And as long as you're connected to the internet, and as long as you've got that live link enabled, then the client can go into your WordPress thing and you can kind of take them through on a Zoom call or whatever, and they're seeing exactly what you're seeing because it's basically your copy from that. So if you want to log in, it's Bob is the username and banana is the password if you want to have a look around. But really, that's kind of just demonstrating the point there. for that. So it's a really, really good tool. And I used this a lot. This was in the very first versions of Local when it was released a few years ago. And I used to love this. And it used to amaze people. So I'd like meet people up in the office or in a coffee shop or somewhere and just show them their WordPress website, on my local machine. And just give them this link, and they could like sit there with their laptop. I had my laptop, and we're going through the same thing for that, and then maybe leave that link on for a couple of days so they can go and produce some feedback for that. But it's a really, really good way, and none of the other systems have this. So desktop server or MAMP, they don't have this kind of facility, and I think it's really, really cool, and it really does cut down on time, because you might know yourself, if you're copying stuff up to staging website, you've got to export it, and then you've got to rename all the URLs to the staging site, copy it back up, yada, yada, yada. So this way is a really quick way of allowing your clients to have a nose around on your actual development site as well. So has everyone been able to open that? Some people have had a look around. I'll leave that on at the moment. It's not going to do very much. But yeah, that's essentially Local. So there's not a lot to it, but it is pretty powerful. Gregory's saying, yep, he got into it for there. And again, you don't have to, if you want to change around with the PHP versions, then you can do that right here and then. So you don't have to create a new clone or website. You can just modify the versions for here, or if you want to see what it's going to run like on Apache, you can change that and then just browse and see if that has made any changes to that as well. So that's it really. There's not a lot to Local, but I think what it offers is fantastic. And if you're looking to run WordPress on your local machine, it's certainly worthwhile downloading that and having a good play around with it for that. It cuts down a lot of time for me. I've been using it again since it's version 6, since all the pro stuff came back into it. I've really been using that for all my local websites. And the problem with the previous version as well is it didn't actually run on Dropbox. You had to go through all these hoops to try and get it to run on Dropbox, but this one does, which is fantastic. Okay, so that's my introduction to using the Local app by Flywheel to create WordPress websites on your local machine. So yeah, really, I'd encourage you guys to do that. Go and explore with that. And create your new websites and try and use that live link thing, because it's really, really cool. And you'll kind of amaze a few people when they realize that they're actually browsing your actual PC. So guys, if you've got any questions, pop them down. They can be local related, or they can be WordPress related for those. I'll stop my share at the moment and go back. I want to do a quick one today. I didn't want to go on and on and on as I normally do. So this is a nice, quick, easy topic. So you guys got any questions?
When you install WordPress and you go to as an admin, can you install a theme or plugins, or are you stuck with what you get?
Well, you can install anything. Yep.
So you become, just like a normal WordPress.
Exactly the same.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yep. So that account that you create is the same account that you would do, just say you're on cPanel or Plesk. That script that installs WordPress for you and that asks you for your username and password. It's kind of exactly the same process. So you're installed as an admin. It's like full WordPress development environment for there.
How does that work with licensing, Will? Is the licenser smart enough to recognize that that's a local install versus, if you're buying just a single site license for something?
No, so you're going to need to, because it's a domain, it's a unique domain. So you're going to need to run that as a license, okay. At least one license for the same as you would a staging site or development site. You need to run that. But, for things like Elementor and Beaver, you don't need to have that connected. All you really need to do is connect like one of them and then just copy the plugins down and they'll run. They just won't get updates. So you don't have to have your local machine always connected to Elementor or always connected to Beaver Builder. Those plugins will run fine. It's just you won't get that automatic update, which you can just use your license for your live website.
Gregory's got a question in the chat there. Will you use, Will, do you use Flywheel synchronization to the live site?
Great question. No, I don't I'm not a WP engine. I'm not a Flywheel customer at all. So I have used it in the past. So I created a test account like many years ago when I first used this, but I'm not an active user at the moment. So what I do is I use the export tool. So I can export that stuff off, and then I will load it up to whatever website I'm using. And then I'll use the WP-CLI tool, which is a command line interface, to rename all the links for those. So if you haven't used WP-CLI, that's in the chat there. Just have a chat for that. It's not supported by all websites. You need to have what's called SSH, or secure shell access, into a website, but it's worthwhile installing and worthwhile asking your host to install, and because it's really super simple. So for example, I can export my database here, FTP up the secure FTP up the files, then import the database, and then all you'd run is WP search replace, and then HTTPS site.local. Can't spell tonight. Okay, so if you can chat, that's the actual command you do. SSHN, do WP search replace, and then your old URL with your new URL, and it'll spin through the whole site and do it all for you. It's heaps quicker than having to do things like using a plugin like WordPress database, I can search replace database, stuff like that. You know, that's just like, it's like one copy of a line. It does it for you. It's all quick as well because it's on the command line interface. Yeah,
that's so great. Thanks.
Yeah, that's the technique that I use.
So WP-CLI is a plugin that you run on the site. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a server software. I think it's Python that it's written in, but it's basically a command line, so a secure shell batch operation. So you can do things like WP DB export out your database, WP DB import, you can import your database for that. So I actually use that because when I'm developing, as you saw, I've got my projects files in my Dropbox, but because I'm running Flywheel on my main site computer here and on my laptop, that means the databases are out of sync. So I've got a little script that what it does is it exports the database out into something called today.sql. And then I run another command and it uses WP-CLI to import the database on the other computer that I run on. So if I'm running on my desktop, I've got a little shell script called dbout that I run, and it deletes the log file, it creates the SQL file. I go onto my laptop, type a little script called dbin, and then imports this today.sql into that particular database. And that means the two databases are now a copy for each other, and I can work on my laptop away from that.
Would something like Updraft Plus just export it, move it across?
Yeah, you can use that as well. So like Updraft Plus.
I used it before, and for one, when we were still on Azure, and we moved to SiteGround, it worked really, really good. The plugin from SiteGround didn't work, not as good, but the Updraft Plus just like that worked.
Yeah, so most of the big backup plugins, they'll allow you to clone or export, and they'll kind of do that search and replace as well. But it takes a lot longer if you're running it as a plugin as it does on the actual server side as well. So you type in that command on the server, and it's literally 2 or 3 seconds, and it's all done. Whereas, if you run it as an export, it can take quite a few minutes to export the database, especially if you've got a big one.
So if you export the site, Will, that you've created on your local machine,
yep.
And then you FTP that into the root directory of the host, is that correct?
Yep.
And you could do that with the blueprint that you create as well. So you can have a default WordPress installation with all the plugins that you use, do a blueprint, and then all someone has to do is provide you with their FTP address, and you can upload that onto their dedicated server.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. As long as you do this process of renaming
the WP
the URLs. Yeah. It's a bit unfortunate. It'd be great if if WordPress stored relative URLs, but it doesn't. It stores the complete URLs, which is a bit of a pain, but yeah, that's a decision that they made a long time ago, and they're not going to change it. Asked Matt Mullenweg directly when he was over here in 2014. I said, Matt, can you change that? He's like, no.
What's their justification for that?
A URL or URI is meant to be a full length. So like if you were to go on the Wikipedia, what's the definition of URL or a uniform resource indicator, then it includes the protocol at the beginning. So that's what he says. He's going to stick with the default.
Even if it's edited, thinking.
Yep.
I've used Duplicator Pro. It's a plugin, which again is one of those backup and export import, and it's always worked very well. But the WPCLI sounds really nice.
It is, and it's got a lot of extra tools in there. It's not just search and replace. You can do updates as well. So you do things like WP core update, and it updates your core. Or if you want to downgrade to a particular version, you can give it a minus sign with the version. So just say your thing's screwed up on 5.8.1, you can then just WP core update minus, and then give it a version 5.8, and it will download that for that. You can update plugins as well. WP plugin update -- all updates all your plugins. Just in one, it just flicks through them. You can do users as well, so you can do pretty much anything with that. So it's really good for integration as well. So if you've got another system that you're registering users in, or even like, for Zoom, for example, you've got like a webinar and a Zoom thing, you can connect Zoom to Zapier, fire a webhook through to your web server, catch that web server for the username and password, and then use WPCLI to create a complementary user in the back end if you want to do that. So it's a really good integration tool. I should do a WPCLI talk.
That would be good. That would be cool.
That would be really good, actually. So this is a silly question, Will. That WPCLI, sorry, I know I asked this before, is that a plugin that you install on your WordPress site?
Okay, no, it's not a plugin, Debbie. It's a shell script. So okay, you install it on the machine that's running your web server.
Okay, so you'd speak to your host about having that installed, and then you'd access that through your cPanel or something like that. Is that correct? Yeah,
not cPanel, but through SSH. So SSH will bring up a little command shell where you can type stuff in.
Yeah.
So you're basically installing it's like a server program that you're installing. And then once it's installed, you can just bring up a command line on your server, which most web hosts allow you to do an SSH command line. And then once it's installed, you can just type in all your commands and it will run.
Okay, awesome.
And if you've got multiple WordPress databases or instances as well, you just need to go into the root of the WordPress, and then it recognizes where it is, and it'll just work for that particular WordPress. So if you've got like a multi-site, or if you run like 2 or 3 on the same host, then you just go into whatever WordPress it is, and it recognizes where it is, and we'll just update for that one WordPress installation.
Awesome.
Nifty little tool. Hey guys, anything else? No, everyone okay? Okay, I'll just share my screen and just do a couple
I just want to say that this was a really good session.
Thanks,
I'm thinking of not necessarily just for me, but for AI users. Instead of giving them a staging site, I can just install it on their own laptops or their computers. They can take it home and play with it.
Yeah.
Because when we teach them, I give them access to staging site, and a lot of times they stuff it up, so I just restore it. But this would save restoring it, and they can play and damage their own computer.
Yeah, and it's free as well, so you're not got any licensing requirements or anything. So it's really, really good. I mean, and you could also supply a zip file of whatever example that you're running on, and you could import a website. So you don't have to create a new website. You can import one as well. So you create a zip file for your students of like the demonstration site that you have, and then they can import that straight in to Flywheel and to local and play with that as well. Yes, that'd be a good option.
What if you wanted to take your live site and bring it local? How would you do that?
Basically, the reverse process. So you download all the files, zip them up, download the files, go into phpMyAdmin, export the database, and then you go to local and then import that as well. Import sites. I'm not sharing my screen. Okay, I'll just quickly share that. I'm going to do the slides anyway. So, yeah, so at the top, hamburger icon. You might be able to see that there's an import site there, and then it'll just ask you for a zip file. And you can have the SQL embedded in there as well. And there's full documentation on the local website as well that tells you how to go through that whole process.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, a couple of slides at the end. So just a shout out for WPSaustralia.org. So if you're looking to find out what meetups are happening around about Australia, there's a little button there, find the meetup. And there's also a link to join us on Slack as well. And that's our Slack channel there. That's kind of where we all hang out. So there's developers, the designers, there's users, there's business people, there's e-commerce, there's all sorts of people in there, all different channels. So I really recommend that you guys create an account and hang out on Slack. You really get to know people as well. But you can ask questions as well for, if you've got some problems, some issues, and you can answer questions as well on there. And guys, if you want to connect with me, I'm mostly on LinkedIn these days under Developer Will. But I'm also on Instagram under willbrown_au and Twitter as well on the same address for that. So happy to connect with you guys if I hadn't already on LinkedIn. Just give us a connection note. Next month, I'm going to be talking about WordPress security best practices. I haven't done a security talk, a full one for quite a while. And for that, so I'm going to be running that one. I'll try and cut it down a little bit because the normal WordPress security talk goes for like an hour and a half. So I'll try and cut it down and just include like the really most important parts of that. So that's the last Monday of the month, which I believe is the 25th of October for that. And again, at 6 p.m. Sydney time.
And Will, sorry to interrupt on that particular talk, will you be covering anything related to security around e-commerce, like, for example, WooCommerce and so on, or is it mainly the core?
It would be mainly for the core. I mean, from a WooCommerce point of view, what particular security options would you be looking for WooCommerce?
Well, that's a good question because I'm just starting to get used to it myself. I've set it up previously, but it was a very low priority access site. But things like anti-fraud integrations, I've been having a look at a couple of those that WooCommerce offers. Things like how effective is Capture, for example, integrated. I mean, I run WordFence, and now I'm going to be using the Capture integration, but these are still things I'm starting to get used to because I'm building a site for my wife at the moment, actually, for her art site, and that's been something new for me. But so this WooCommerce looks really great. There's a lot of, it's still evolving, as I see on the support sites and so on, but the security is quite critical from a preventing fraud, trying to minimize it.
Minimize fraud. Okay. Yeah. I could add that on to the end. And if you want to stay along, or if you want to watch the catch up as well, because it does go on for a bit. Yeah, I can have a look at adding some of that stuff, particularly for e-commerce and things like PCI compliance as well, which is always a big one for store owners. Yeah, that's great. Super. Okay, guys, if you don't have anything else, then thank you very much.
I just want to mention to Gregory, you got a really big echo whenever you talk.
Oh, okay. I'll thank you. I'll look into that. I've had some technical issues with the sound tonight. I'll fix it up.
No worries. Oh, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining me this month. Thank you for Dow as well for helping out.
My pleasure. Thank you, Will. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. It was awesome.
Yeah. So this will be in the Facebook group for a replay, I'll post it on YouTube as well. And I'll post all those links to the articles and things as well on the meetup page and all the social media pages as well. So you can click through those. Okay, guys,
Thanks,
have a good
Will.
evening. Take care and see you next month.